This is Pastor Paul Day of Stevens Ave Congregational Church with a reflection for the evening of Maundy Thursday and Good Friday. Maundy Thursday, Good Friday. You know, the other days in Holy Week seem pretty straightforward. Holy Monday, Holy Tuesday, Holy Wednesday, even Holy Saturday. But what's with Maundy Thursday and Good Friday? In these days of sheltering at home, one supposes you could be a little sympathetic to being confused over whether it's Monday or Thursday. But what does TGIF mean for someone who's on furlough or an overworked essential employee? Well, in fact, Good Friday actually comes from a corruption of the original name of the day, which was God's Friday. And Maundy Thursday comes from the Latin for the day, the Latin term mandatus, commandment, because it was in the upper room, gathered at the table with his disciples, that Jesus gave a new commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. John 15, verse 12. But there's even more to it. If we go back a couple of chapters in John to chapter 13, we read this. Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from the world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hand, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. You see, Jesus first demonstrated love, and then he commanded it. He demonstrated love by taking the job that was usually assigned to the youngest member or the lowest servant in a household, to wash the feet of all the guests. I remember a few years ago reading a reflection by a nurse about foot washing. She described in quite a bit of detail about the experience she had one night of dealing with a homeless man who had come into their hospital, whose feet were dirty, ulcerated, smelly. She was about to go off shift and could easily have passed the job on to someone else, but she instead decided to take the duty herself and carefully, gently washed his feet, bathing it with sudsy soap, soothing it with oil, binding it when she was done. These days we take our hats off to nurses and other healthcare workers who are taking care of people with the virus, people they don't know whether they have viruses or not. And we might ask ourselves, what does foot washing look like for us in these days of physical distancing? But there's more to the story that, as John tells it. John says Jesus loved them to the end. There's more to his command as well. Jesus said, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." And he added, "No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." Jesus did just that on Good Friday. And not only for his friends, but for all the world, for us. And so we do call it Good Friday. We might think of what Joseph said to his brothers who had sold him into slavery. "Don't you see? You planned evil against me, but God used those same plans for good. As you see all around you, life for many people. The world did its worst in crucifying Jesus, but God used it to bring life, new life, for all of us." So what does neighbor love look like for us? Many healthcare workers are risking their own lives right now. sacrificing their precious family time to care for others. We shelter in place and forgo gathering in worship and fellowship out of love for one another and for our neighbors, especially the most vulnerable. What more can we do? What more can I do? We can check in on our neighbors. We can give to food banks and other worthy efforts. We can give blood as if we are able. In many ways, we can try to follow Jesus' example and his command to love one another. God bless you. Amen.